I'm probably going to step on some toes today, but I promise you we're going to be all right. In over a decade of coaching and counseling couples, one issue that comes up over and over and over again is concerns and conflict around friendships of the opposite sex. The question is it okay for individuals who are seriously dating or engaged to have close friendships of the opposite sex? What about for individuals who are married? Is it okay? I've got a few thoughts on this topic, and that's what we're going to cover today on RelationShots. Welcome to RelationShots. My name's Eric Wooten, and if this is your first time stopping by, welcome. Feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss an opportunity to impress your neighbor with your relational expertise. Today, we're going to talk about the hotly debated topic of what place, if any, relationships or friendships of the opposite sex have in the lives of couples who are engaged or married. Every time I do premarital counseling with a couple, I make a point to bring up or force the discussion around their expectations on friendships of the opposite sex because I know that it's going to come up, as I've seen it a million times in the counseling session. And when I do that, there are ideas and perspectives across the board on this idea. I talk to some people who say, you know what, if we have good trust and communication, then why wouldn't I trust them having a good friend of the opposite sex? If I don't trust them, I probably shouldn't marry them. That's a thought. Other people might say something like this. You know, I'm fine if it's somebody they had before we met, then I don't want to be the person that forces them to get rid of a friendship that they've known longer than me. Then you've got the as long as perspectives. Oh, I'm fine with it as long as it's not anybody they've dated or slept with before. I'm fine with it as long as they introduce me to them and I get comfortable and know them a little better. So some individuals are fine with it and they're cool with their spouse or the person they're engaged to going out and having lunch or dinner with a friend of the opposite sex that they've known for years, and they have no problem with it. And there's people on the other end of the spectrum that, I'm not real comfortable with them doing that. And usually what's behind it is either the trust built in the relationship, whether it's been broken and there's been issues around this topic before, or sometimes it has to do with previous relationships where somebody has been cheated on or where the person they were dating was less than trustworthy. And based on that pain, they just don't feel comfortable with their new spouse or their new boyfriend or girlfriend engaging in friendships of the opposite sex. So what's the answer to this age-old question of, is it okay to have close friendships of the opposite sex? Well, my perspective or approach on this is a little bit different than a lot of people's. When you bring up this topic, most people are simply concerned with, could this friendship with the opposite sex turn into something that's romantic and physical at some point? And I do think that's always an option. I really don't care if somebody's been friends with somebody of the opposite sex their whole life. It always has the potential, in the right circumstances, with the right environment surrounding them. Maybe somebody is in a low place emotionally or spiritually. Maybe their relationship at home isn't good, and the grass can always look greener on the other side. They can have a tendency to look at the person and think, man, it's so easy with this person. Maybe I should have married them. So I do believe that every relationship that you have, every friendship with the opposite sex, always has the possibility that it could turn into something romantic or physical. But I also think there's a more subtle and dangerous component to this that a lot of people aren't talking about, and that's what I want to address today. I believe that a close friendship of the opposite sex will absolutely rob your marriage of the emotional intimacy that is so vital to having a healthy relationship. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say that I go to work and I have a real close friend of the opposite sex that I spend time with talking at work. And during our workday, I'm talking about my struggles with the kids, my hopes and dreams, some of the entrepreneurial endeavors I'm thinking about doing, my difficulties with the boss because they know what that's like. And we're just talking about some stuff. We're not sharing feelings about each other. We're just talking about the average daily stuff that we're dealing with. Or maybe on the way to work or on the way home in my commute, I'm getting on the phone and I'm talking with my close friend of the opposite sex about the same and similar things. Then guess what happens? When I get home tonight, guess what I don't need to do? Yeah, you got it. I now don't need to have those same conversations with my spouse because I've already have them. I've already gotten them off my chest. I've already discussed them. I've already put those things to bed. So now I no longer need to have the conversations with my spouse that is uniquely designed to create emotional connection and intimacy between the two of us. And if you want to get real for a moment, let's just acknowledge that our spouse is not always the easiest or safest place to have a conversation. Maybe it's because we're in the midst of conflict and they just really don't want to hear what I'm saying, or maybe they just naturally aren't as appreciative or validating of the things I come up with. But I tell you what, that close friend of the opposite sex, they're usually open to hearing whatever I come up with. I mean, I can bring my entrepreneurial idea to my close friend of the opposite sex. I can let them know, listen, hey, I'm thinking about starting a dog grooming business for three-legged dogs. You know what my friend's going to say? That's amazing. There's such a need for that. You have such a great heart. You're a good guy. I think you're going to kill that. What happens if I go home and share that same idea with my spouse? My spouse is going to be like, Joker, are you kidding me? Three-legged dogs? How many are those anyway? Listen, the only way this is a good idea is if this means that in the time that you normally would do 3 dogs with 4 legs, you could now do 4 dogs with 3 legs, but charge the same price. That's the only way this makes sense, but you don't even like dogs. So the reality is that our close friend of the opposite sex is not worried about, am I going to pay my mortgage? Can I pay the power bill? Can I pay insurance on the car? Our spouse has to worry about all those little things, so they're never going to be as affirming as somebody outside of the marriage might be. Which means if you have another outlet for emotional intimacy and connection not called your spouse, you will not do the hard work of resolving conflict. You will not do the hard work of pushing past the walls that your spouse may have up. You will not do the hard work of selflessly serving your spouse so that you can create an environment at home where they will be receptive to the kinds of conversations you want to have. You'll always take the path of least resistance. That is part of the reason that I think close friendships of the opposite sex always have the ability to harm your marriage by robbing it of the emotional intimacy that you need to build with your spouse. So to sum up my thoughts on whether it's okay for engaged or married couples to have close friendships of the opposite sex, I would say this: I just don't think there's wisdom in it. I could give you a whole list of negative outcomes that can result from having an ongoing, consistent friendship with somebody of the opposite sex, but I really can't give you any positives that I don't think you can find in a healthy marriage or even in healthy friendships with people of the same sex that you hang out with already. There will always be potential in an opposite sex friendship for it to become physical and romantic, and even if it never gets there, I can promise you that it will be robbing your relationship of emotional intimacy that is vital to you guys thriving and growing as a couple. So I know there's going to be a ton of thoughts on this and probably some pushback, which is why I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation in the comments section below. If this video was helpful to you, or you know a couple that's been talking about this, I'd encourage you to share it with them. I look forward to seeing you next time on RelationShots.